So, hello, dear viewers and listeners of the podcast Caught in the Motion. With me, the main host, Javor Ivanov, and with my favorite co-host, Kubrat Ivanov, more known as Scooby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, we're joined by a very special guest called Andrew Boyle. He is an undergraduate from UCD in physiotherapy. He also has a master's from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, where he studied gerontology and neurology, and he's a very, very experienced rugby player. So, hello Andrew, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Yeah, delighted to be here.
Thank you for taking our invitation and coming along today. We are really happy that you are with us. And I will leave the first questions to this young man who couldn't wait for you to see you and ask you questions as he's playing rugby and so on.
So, the first question is, which secondary school did you attend?
So I went to a quite a small secondary school in Dean's Grange in Ireland called Clonkeen College. So predominantly a school that was, I suppose, sports based in terms of it did a lot of athletics and Gaelic football, but no rugby. So not necessarily where I thought I would go. But yeah, it was really good. So I really enjoyed my time there actually.
Okay, and you went to rugby from the club level. You started off...
Yeah, so I played for a very small club in Cornell's Court called St. Bridget's Rugby Club. I started there at under 7s, and my dad was a big rugby fan, so he coached us all the way up to under 12s, and we had a little team that went from under 12s to under 16s. Normally it stops at under 12s, but we had a few group of guys who obviously enjoyed their time playing, and so we extended it out a few years and just played kind of club rugby. So I never had any sort of idea that I would make it further than that. It was just something I enjoyed and something that hadn't really crossed my mind that there was even a potential, or I was even halfway decent enough to maybe go a little bit further until kind of around about that 16-year-old mark. So, but it was just something fun to do at the weekends up to that point.
100%. And you first realised you were good at it at which age? 15, 16?
My realisation I was good at it probably didn't come even until after that, but or even maybe in retrospect, I never really thought I was that good. I was probably maybe a big fish in a small pond back then. I was a little bit bigger for my age, and that always seemed to help. But I around about 16 there was I think one scout or something just saw a match and offered me to come along to a little kind of trial for what was called the Metro team and kind of the club system. And I didn't really even want to go to the trial, to be honest. I kind of thought, oh sure, look, I'll give it a try, and kind of went from there. And that's kind of when I started to believe that maybe when I started to see, because I knew I played for a small club. I knew there was obviously the big school system. I never really even thought I was comparable to those kind of guys. That's when I started to think, okay, when I did play and make, I suppose, a small bit more of an impact at around about that 16 and test myself against better players, I kind of thought, okay, maybe there is something. I had a little bit more than maybe I thought I did. So.
And what position did you play in? Forward, back?
Oh, I was back for sure. Jeez, don't put me in the pack whatever happens. But so predominantly, I started as a centre, and as my career progressed, I kind of moved out to the wing, and then full back would probably be my favourite position that I played in. But so centre to start.
So the next question is
it's I have the honour to ask the next question. Have you ever thought of moving abroad as a rugby player, also develop a different career, moving out of Ireland?
Yeah, so when I finished up with Leinster, which we can talk about in 2014, and I actually moved straight to New Zealand after that. So I was in New Zealand for the guts of 4.5-5 years, and then Australia after that for a year. So I played rugby over in New Zealand, and again, it kind of was the perfect scenario of I'd finished the physiotherapy degree at that point, and I wanted to go and start kind of work over there, but I also wanted to, New Zealand for any rugby player is kind of the mecca of the sport, and the passion they have around the sport and just the culture of it is brilliant. So So yeah, that was one of the big draws, and I think I wanted to get away from Ireland a little bit as well. You know, like most people at that kind of age, it was a bit of a rite of passage. But I really enjoyed my time over there, and I played for 2 seasons in Auckland, and then came back and actually came back to try and make the Irish Sevens team then in 2016, but got injured, so it kind of tapered away at that point and moved more focused into the kind of physiotherapy side of things. But I really enjoyed that, and I think that really gave me a lot, kind of living abroad for the first time. And
it's coming up now. Even an extra question here from me. Listen to you, what you're saying about your interesting experience. In the club level, where do you think it's a higher level of rugby, in New Zealand or in Ireland?
Oh, for sure, New Zealand. It's the only comparison I can make is it's treated, or it's such a community sport over there, like the GAA is here. It's a sport that pretty much every family has an involvement in. Every suburb has a club. The facilities are brilliant, and there's so much more, I think, kind of investment right from the top down over there, and they're a lot more passionate, I kind of feel. Now, I think that's changing in Ireland. I think obviously the sport is growing, and obviously the national team are doing tremendously well. So that
Irish team is still the first in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, close to it. But I think just the foundational level of how the sport is treated over there, and the skill level, that one difference I kind of felt that really actually made a big impact in the comparison, or I thought would have had a big impact when you compare the two systems, how they do it from age grade level over there, is they do it by weight class predominantly versus age. So over here, obviously, you'd have just your under 10s, 11s, etc. Whereas predominantly over there, it was if you were a 10-year-old who was 10 kg heavier than everybody else, you'd be classed with the other kind of guys that were around about your own weight. So physically, the emphasis is taken away from physicality. The emphasis is put onto skill, and I think that's better for the game. Their core skills are phenomenal compared to maybe somebody who probably like myself when I was 10 or 11 and a little bit taller, a little bit bigger than everyone else. I just relied on my size to a degree. Versus if I was put up probably against bigger fellas, I would have had to improve my passing, improve my footwork, improve those types of things. So it's a fantastic place, I think, to learn rugby, to play rugby, and to going over there after I'd had a certain amount of years in rugby. It was I felt like I even was back learning. Almost as if I was starting again.
So in a way, they were more advanced in a lot of aspects.
And you played for UCD rugby. Now you were filled with your experience from New Zealand before or after that time at UCD?
So afterwards. So
after.
Yeah, I was in UCD from 2009 to 2014. Yeah.
Okay, so my question towards you is the difference in skill level from club level to UCD. How big was it?
There was a big step up from club level, definitely, that I played for. To UCD, like UCD was always the college I wanted to go to. It was because of their rugby prowess and because of the standards and the facilities they had. It was a big kind of learning curve, the under 20s level initially, and then stepping up to the senior team. Yeah, it's probably the one team I really felt at home with fully, I suppose, when I got to the kind of the peak of where I was in my rugby career. I loved the spirit of the club and the kind of the ethos of I think combining that young student lifestyle with the passion and the I suppose the team bonding that comes with that kind of sport. But it was a major step up, I think, in terms of the physicality, definitely up to a senior level. But it's a brilliant, I think the AIL in general is a brilliant kind of breeding ground for talent, and we're seeing that in the last few years. There are a lot of people, including a few people I played with, pretty much went straight from the AIL into kind of the likes of Leinster systems without maybe going through the traditional model of coming up through schools and representing underage teams. So,
and to add on to that question, how do trials for UCD work? Is it an open trial where anybody's allowed to go to, or is it an invitational sort of system where
So yeah, well, now things may have changed. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But so back when I was applying, obviously the only criteria I think to play for UCD, it's slightly different to other clubs. Any other kind of, I suppose, non-university team, you just go along to their pre-season kind of. You just, essentially just sign up for the club and go along and work through that kind of, I suppose, an informal trial system.
Yeah.
With UCD, you have to obviously be undertaking a course in UCD, and so a little bit different. But for me, I was kind of, I suppose, representing Leinster under 18s by the time I was, and a little bit of Irish under 18s as well. So there was kind of was lucky enough to get a scholarship to UCD. To play rugby, but predominantly if anyone wasn't coming through that system, it was just coming along to the first of a few training sessions where everybody, all the different senior teams and under 20 teams are kind of training together, and the coaches, I suppose, then diversify kind of into the different streams. Yeah.
So when was the first time that you got called into Leinster and then for the Ireland team?
The Leinster underage system, I think from about 16s to 18s was my first kind of taste of that. Now that's obviously very much an underage. We went along to, I suppose, kind of a few different trials, and we had various different competitions, including kind of interpros and stuff like that in 17s and 18s. And then there was an Irish clubs and schools kind of diversification in terms of the so I was lucky enough again to play for the Irish under 18s clubs in a couple of tournaments, one in Italy and one in France. So that was that underage system kind of puts you out into a kind of a marketplace where the Leinster Academy and the different academies around Ireland would be looking and kind of scouting those. So I was lucky enough in 2019 to be approached by the Leinster Academy and the coaches there and asked to join the academy for 3 years. That was my first kind of full taste of, I suppose, a professional setup, and so it was kind of in the sub academy you could call it prior to that at the underage level. So.
Okay, well, that's very impressive.
Impressive, definitely, no doubt. And here it's leading to the next question, which is it's kind of exciting question for me, really, and I can't imagine how you felt. But my question is, how did you feel representing Ireland, coming out of the stadium and all this crowd representing your country? How did you?
At the time, predominantly nervous. Like there's looking back in retrospect and hindsight, it's a totally different feeling now. There's a lot more pride. There's a lot more, having an ability now to pat myself in the back and realize, oh God, that was a really cool experience. But at the time, I probably was so caught up in.
You were nervous and you couldn't kind of say, Jesus, I fully appreciate it's a big pride to play for your country. I can't even imagine to put for your
100%
country the shirt and
especially rugby, which is such a big sport in Ireland.
It's one of the national sports. Rugby. I think the national sports in Ireland.
100%. So it's not that you're just going out there playing, performing for Ireland, but rugby wear now, especially in the last few years with media and more people getting into the sport, watching it, and you can see that the globalization of it. It's definitely starting now with media helping out predominantly.
And it's brilliant to see. I think it's a wonderful sport. Look, there are issues with it, and I think it's moving in the right direction. And I think it's even changed a lot since I was playing. But I think it was. It's sad. I think it's the human condition to not really appreciate what you've achieved or what you've done until maybe some time has passed. But
I think it's I think with most of us it's like that. We don't really appreciate how well we did, how great we did, and then when you respectively look at it back and said, "My God, I really achieved like yourself. You achieved really such a thing." And I think with most people it's like that, even in academics or whatever. And next question is. I diverted a little bit more about your current profession. What sparked your interest in physiotherapy?
I'd probably say again my first involvement in that kind of, when I was about 16, first involvement in slightly higher level rugby. Obviously picking up a couple of injuries, working with physios at that point. It was the only thing that had kind of given me that little bit of an idea of, geez, this is something I actually wouldn't mind doing myself. Obviously, I was very passionate about sport, very passionate about, I think, just being active and not really, let's say, picking up a job that involves sitting at a desk. It was the only thing, and actually it was literally the only thing I put on my CAO, the system that you apply for. Like, it was that or reset the leaving
so
cert.
So somehow the sports led you to your profession as well. Which is great. And what is your hobby nowadays? I mean, I know you can play rugby, you can play, I mean, for pleasure, but apart of that, what is your hobby? Any other sports or?
Yeah, I probably I don't play any other sports at the moment. I play some kind of social tag rugby and keep fit in the gym, and that's something that I'm quite passionate about. Probably other hobbies, like I'm a big outdoorsy, love hiking, love camping, love anything active really, to be honest. I'd probably be your traditional kind of early 30s male in that. I'm getting into that kind of love sea swimming, love sauna, those types of activities. I'm really getting, but I suppose like there's lots of other passions in my life. Like I've a huge passion around mental health and volunteering with that, and then I'm a big reader. I'm a big kind of like I love. Trying to get to know myself a little bit better, kind of be a little bit more a big reader of kind of things like self-development kind of books and meditation and stuff like that. So that's very interesting. Yeah, my wife, especially my sister-in-law, Mina, she's very into these things, and really they kind of open a door to a different dimension, if you like. And I think it's very interesting. And unfortunately, I haven't found much time at the moment I would like as well to read more about meditation and all these things. Thank you, great answer, and really, So I leave it to my co-host to...
Well, I have a question. Talking about hobbies, is there anything that you'd like to do that you aren't doing currently now? Maybe something that's very lofty, something that's in your head that's, maybe I would like to do this in the future, but not currently because of whatever. Anything that's passed your head recently, hobby-wise, where?
I've always loved music. I've always been, and that's something looking back, I probably would regret now not having, in my youth, learned to play an instrument or been more involved in music. So part of me is saying, oh God, it's too late. I can't. There's no point in picking up a guitar now, or going and getting a keyboard and starting to learn the piano. But like that's something I think again I'd be really, as long as I'm prepared to maybe be terrible at it for a good while.
But it's never too late.
No,
it's never ever too late. It's never too late. What kind of music you like? Because I love music too, and
I'd probably be. I love kind of indie folk, kind of more singer-songwriter. Like I love the likes of Dermot Kennedy, Noah Kahan at the moment. There's a great Irish band called Kingfisher that I'm big into, and that kind of, I suppose, a little bit more folky, a little bit more acoustic kind of singer-songwriter stuff.
Okay.
And the final question for today is, what would be your advice for student athletes? How do you balance both realms of life? Because you finish school and then you're off to training straight away or to the gym, and then you're back home and you have the books in front of you, and it's like you're living one life at one moment and then another life in the other. What's your probably best advice to how to balance that correctly?
That's a good question. It's a tricky thing, and especially if you're trying to play or compete at a very high level, as well as like again the stresses and strains that come from the Irish kind of school system are very tricky to do independently of any of that. It's different for everybody. For me anyway, from my own personal experience, I really found that compartmentalizing and like the kind of the focus of certain time for, or I suppose, getting the most out of my time, if that made sense. probably easier when I was back 16, 17 and trying to do both. And even through college, I didn't really have too much. We had a little bit of Facebook, but we didn't really have social media. The other kind of distractions is a good word. So I really found I had to, again, compartmentalize that. I knew I had training X, Y, and Z days a week. I knew that was going to take X amount of time. And it just meant the other time had to be, getting the bang for my buck from the other time when I knew, okay, I have this amount of time to study, I have this amount of time to try and achieve other bits that I wanted to. And I think planning that out was probably the biggest thing I needed to do and found benefit from was so important, because otherwise I think I would have just floated through. And the structure around the school system and rugby, because it was very, I suppose, time orientated and set out for me, it kind of made it a bit easier to a degree. But yeah, just actually, I suppose, setting a plan for yourself, trying to, as best you can, stick to that and avoid distractions. But that's probably a little bit harder to do nowadays than it back was when I was.
And do you think that schools should implement a system where athletes' days and their timetables in school is slightly different to just pure academics and scholars that want to pursue just that? Because you have this sort of system in other countries where if you're an athlete and they see that you have a physical capability, you have talent, you have, to a certain extent, you can achieve something in the sporting world, you study your base subjects so that you can go into your university, but you kind of cut out some of the other ones that won't be relevant for you career-wise, which allows them to balance more going to the gym, training, performing at a high level, getting their sleep as well, and also being able to prepare for exams. Do you think that something like that should be implemented in Ireland as well, or the system right now is okay?
Well, I think the school system in general, it's evolving, but I don't think it really achieves the needs of kind of, I think it's moving in the right direction. Even the likes of PE being a leaving cert subject now is fantastic. And that, God, I remember back again in my leaving cert year, if you did honours maths, you didn't get any PE. I think if you did pass maths, you got a half an hour of physical education a week, which again generally was just throw a football out into or a basketball into the hall and let them just move around for half an hour. So the balancing or the awareness that there's so much more to potentially the education system, or sorry, the whole educational process for a young kind of male or female, but I think that stretches out into emotional intelligence, all of these different areas that people have talents in and learning needs to encompass, that our school system just doesn't address. It is a bit more of that, you look at a classroom from the 1940s versus now, they're pretty much the same environment. We haven't changed things really around how we teach people and how we prepare them for the world, in spite of the world having changed dramatically. So I think you're right. I think it's a good point that not only the physical kind of education and the how a student athlete or how an athlete can be helped to I suppose balance that could be dramatically better, but I think that's across everything. I think there's so much more to education than just the rote learning kind of system that we have, which is you achieve this certain grade by learning all this material, but then when you get out into the real world, it doesn't a lot of it doesn't translate into how you actually navigate the world, achieve things, and especially because the world is changing so quickly, our education system really doesn't, I think, mimic that all that well.
Yeah, because everybody's born with their own strengths. Everybody's born even not in their physical capability, but rather mental. Some are more sociable than others and prefer to go into certain types of professions. Then you have people that are really good at history, people that are really good at maths, and instead of forcing them, for an example, in the Leaving Cert to study some filler subjects where they don't really want to be studying. Like for an example, I don't want to be studying some of the subjects that I'm taking for Leaving Cert. I'm taking them because I know I can achieve a certain level of results.
Sure.
But I won't need them anymore after Leaving Cert, and I'm sure, just like myself, I'd prefer to focus and emphasize my studies on something that I'm going to do into university and then possibly as a career rather than just school.
Yeah, and look, I absolutely agree with you, and I think there's a benefit as well, though. In some instances, life doesn't always present you with, the things you want to do, the things you're passionate about. I do think, again, there's benefit through those struggles of the discipline of having to have a subject that you hate, or a subject that you really, maths was just I couldn't wrap my head around it.
The same like me.
But, the fact that I had to, I suppose, get into that mindset of, okay, this is something I need to do, this is something I want to achieve, and I'm going to not necessarily, I suppose, force myself to do it, but the discipline and the strength of character that kind of builds to do something you don't want to do, and do it consistently, and do it to a high level. Even though I knew, yes, I don't use maths in my everyday life at all, but the skill set that I did build from that was the focus, the determination, the resilience to push through doing something that was tough for me, doing something that didn't really,
appeal to you.
Yeah, exactly. And so I do think, in spite of, if we just gave everybody the things they wanted to do, is that part of society, where people do build resilience and do build, I think that work ethic and that motivation, does that fall away a little bit? So it's a fine balancing act, I feel.
Okay.
So there are benefits to, like, I'm a big believer in doing hard things is actually a really good thing for you, whether that be exercise, whether that be setting yourself challenges and goals, or this, like, I love cold showers, and everybody always kind of looks at, or sea swimming, and everybody kind of, a lot of people are like, why would you do that to yourself? But again, there's some physiological benefits to it that are proven, but at the same time, I just like the challenge of doing something I don't want to do, and the benefit you get from that. It's those little things you do every day, and the little kind of ways you challenge yourself every day. I think us as humans are made for challenge. Like, our whole brain system, our whole dopamine reward system is challenge, and I think that's why a lot of people fall into a bit of rut in life, is because, again, they feel stagnant, or they feel stuck, is because they're not being either challenging themselves or being challenged adequately, or don't have the chance to, for various different reasons, to go and try and achieve something and push themselves. And because I think our whole ethos, it's how we grew up, or we evolved in environments that were challenging, and by overcoming those challenges is how our whole kind of system works, I think. I think there's a benefit to doing some of the harder subjects, the hard, or the not as favorable subjects as well, and maybe seeing them as a they'll stand to you in different ways. Even though I'm not going to use the material, I'm learning how to do things I don't want to do, and learning how to be disciplined in things I don't want to do, which definitely is, as you all know, that's definitely a big part of working life later, is there's a lot of times I don't want to go to work, I don't want to write that note, I don't want to do this, but the discipline you learn from maybe that school system, definitely stands to you in different ways.
Okay, well, thank you very much for
Thank
today.
you, Andrew.
I think we made a very good episode, and to anybody else watching this episode today and has enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, and if you want to be notified for more future videos and podcasts, hit the notification bell, and we'll catch you in the next one.